to masculinity in crisis flicks, Sean Durkin's 2023 The Iron Claw, and James Ashcroft's 2024, should be 2025, The Rule of Jenny Penn. The Iron Claw dropped an elbow on the emotions of audiences and critics alike, but was snubbed come award season, and in the tradition of real fake wrestling, looks to have had its championship belt storyline stolen by The Rock. The Rule of Jenny Penn is an elevated straight-to-streamer that ran for 2-ish weeks before retiring to the idyllic tranquility of the Shudder content catalog interface. Both films feature high-powered masculine archetypes: Jeffrey Rush's intelligentsia elite judge, George Hanari's World Cup winning rugby player, and the Von Erich family's suite of title-holding professional wrestlers, all whom find their strength fail when isolated by their typically masculine, stoic approach to hardship. With body counts approaching slasher movie levels, each film exhibits potent visual language, extensive photography of the nude or semi-nude male form, along with a Mr. Sacco-esque finishing move for its antagonist. But where Iron Claw's tearjerker of a lockup with toxic masculinity is much too simple, The Rule of Jenny Penn, a film victimized by a bad title, misplaced in its genre, too grim and too demanding of an audience that has never been less sympathetic of wrinkly old men, is much more deserving of a shot at the title. We lose our first brother before Faden, kind of cheating, but whatever, and after Daddy Frin stomps the bejesus out of some jobber, young Kevin Von Erich absorbs the family prophecy. To beat this thing, which you can take to mean the existential suffering that is life, you need to be the toughest, strongest, most successful, absolute best, to rely on no one but yourself, and also win the NWA Championship in the family biz of professional wrestling. We time jump Kevin is diced to the socks, and we get a sense of how well each family member is doing in this particular aim via Patriarch Von Erich's tier list. Fritz reminds the boys that the rankings can always change, and they do! Kevin falls in love, asks for more ribs, and gets leapfrogged by his brothers for job promotions, the physical sacrifices and emotional repressions they undertake in the pursuit of becoming Daddy's best boy, landing them right into the clutches of life's iron claw. As Kevin loses tag team partners left and right, he's left wondering if the people in his corner are just setting him up to get beat up and broken, winding up face down on the canvas of life's ring. The Iron Claw is a film as fixated with symbols as its two major subjects are: professional wrestling and toxic masculinity. In wrestling, especially in the era in which the film takes place, the ring is a stage where life's battles are dramatized and fought out. Its morality is simple. There's the good guy, the face in wrestling parlance, who's maybe from the state the event is taking place in, or has a wholesome message like staying in school and eating your vitamins, and the bad guy, the heel, who cheats to win and says whatever he can to get the audience to boo louder. Good and evil meet in the holy crucible that is the squared circle, and the performers use the shorthand of symbolism, costumes, gestures, moves signifying strength or guile, a gold belt for the champion, to tell the story. In the first sequence of the film, Durkin exposes the iconography of wrestling as phony, showing Fritz Von Erich and his supposed in-ring nemesis existing indifferently in the locker room after their match, after which the supposedly cruel, powerful Fritz picks up his wife and kids and playfully pretends to be pained by his son's iron claw. Then they head back behind the venue to the mobile home where they live. Illusion dispelled. For the next 2 hours, Durkin works to dispel the illusion of toxic masculinity, defined best in Fritz's own words: to be the toughest, the strongest, the most successful, the absolute best, to rely on no one but ourselves, and in doing so, nothing will ever hurt us again. The characters conjure up this illusion of greatness and invincibility through the use of symbols. Physiques, guns, trophies, the gold watch, the big car, the big house, alligator shoes, a woman as a showpiece but not necessarily a partner, silence, dry eyes. Because if you have a gun, you're safe. If you have the big house, you're successful. If you're not crying, this didn't hurt you. And if you have all of these, you're happy. But not only is all of this ineffective at preventing the Von Erich family from getting hurt again and again and again, the strain of maintaining the illusion breaks brother after brother after brother. Early in the runtime, Zac Efron's Kevin is passed up for a title shot in the ring. A surprise to the characters and audience alike. But when it happens, we're all the way out in the wide shot. My knee-jerk reaction was to criticize Durkin. He's cutting away from the action. Kevin's reaction to his loss of his title shot. Why aren't we in close-up? But that's exactly Durkin's intention. His camera is like his characters. Problems that should be getting their and our focus are left on the periphery or pushed to the background. Ignored. Problem drinking, steroid abuse, drug abuse, outbursts of violence or anger. Problem spending, mental health issues. This comes across strongest when David's ghost appears in the background of one scene. The grief of his loss pushed aside, repressed, never dealt with, but lingering, present. And when his mother happens to glance in that direction, he disappears, unacknowledged. Durkin wordlessly marries these periphery harbingers of doom with their corresponding symbol in the character of Ric Flair. He's got the biggest house on the biggest hill on the biggest side of town. He's got a limo that's a mile long with 25 women in it. He doesn't cry. He doesn't complain. He carries on. He asserts, if you're a real man, you never go down. You just stay up. Flair is the most performatively masculine man in the film, and that's why he's the champ. His cartoonish heel persona is Fritz's real-life philosophy fully realized. Kevin snaps in the ring with Flair, seemingly going off script and getting disqualified, adopting his father's finishing move and drawing blood with it, losing control due to all he's repressed. Later in the locker room, Flair is elated by Kevin's random outburst of violence. He thought Kevin was soft, but random acts of violence are something a real man would do, something he would do. Flair invites him out drinking. Let's go get fucked up. The rematch Kevin was denied earlier in the film for being too soft, for taking too long to recover after taking a bump on concrete, is enthusiastically extended to him here. Kevin takes one last look at the belt strapped around Flair's waist as Flair shotguns a beer. It's never said out loud, but the connection is solidified in Kevin's mind. This toxic lifestyle of overworking, self-medicating, and repression with Flair's ultra-successful, ultra-macho alter ego bound together with the championship belt. He turns his back on it. Kind of. It's here Durkin loses me. Despite making massive changes to the real-life story, Durkin's toxic masculinity narrative and the Von Erich family curse saga isn't a great fit. Famously, he removed an entire brother, but maybe you haven't heard that Kevin's older brother died in a freak accident, getting electrocuted and drowning in a puddle when he was a kid. Or that David lost his 13-week-old daughter to SIDS. That David is rumored to have died from a drug overdose. And that Mike, Kerry, and the aforementioned unfeatured Chris all struggled with substance abuse. That Kerry was in significant legal trouble and facing a lengthy prison sentence. That Fritz sold the family wrestling business, not Kevin. And that Kevin fought it, going as far to sue the buyer. That Kevin continues to make wrestling appearances to this day. That his sons are professional wrestlers. I mention all this because while Durkin changes things drastically, it seems like he was unwilling to change things past a point of unrecognizability. Durkin's film needs you to blame professional wrestling and Fritz for the deaths of the Von Erich brothers, without getting too far away from the real-life Von Erichs. But real-life Kevin Von Erich doesn't blame Fritz, and real-life Kevin Von Erich never turned his back on professional wrestling. Durkin's compromise between real life and fiction doesn't do enough. Movie Fritz is never portrayed as that bad a guy. Not bad enough to warrant Kevin's attempted murder at the climax of the film. This is most glaring in the case of Mike. Mike is pressured into the family business, sure. He cuts in line 1,000 other guys whose childhood dream was to be a pro wrestler. Right away, his mug gets slapped on the cover of trade magazines and is immediately featured in a prominent storyline due to his family connections. He's robbed of his previous lucrative career of rocking out at the local college frat for beer money. A real tragedy. You want to blame Fritz for setting his boy up like that? Go ahead. But then Mike flubs a move in the ring and dislocates his shoulder. Maybe you can get away with saying Fritz is responsible indirectly for this. Maybe. He pushed him in there too early, he was inexperienced, and that's why he got hurt. Fine. But then, during a routine shoulder operation, Mike goes into toxic shock and ends up in a coma. Kevin, in shock himself, stunned by the latest freak accident to befall his tragedy-riddled family, calls his wife Pam from the hospital, and she says, if you want to blame someone, blame your father. What? Toxic masculinity doesn't cause toxic shock syndrome. How's this for a plot summary? Down on his luck, Fritz bounces back from the freak death of his first child to work his family out of the trailer park and into a ranch home by following his dream of becoming a professional wrestler. When his time in the ring comes to an end, he pivots to owning the circuit he previously labored under, and then provides a livelihood for each of his 4 sons who go on to become famous off the back of their father's name and gimmick. Then These Nepo baby brats bite the iron claw that fed them and blame him for all of their life choices and misfortunes because he told them not to cry. It's an exaggeration, but it's not that far off. The worst thing Fritz does in the film are squeeze David's head a little too hard, yell at Mike for dropping a fence, not respect the Nepo baby chain of command by promoting his more talented sons over his oldest. The one legitimate gripe the boys can have with Dad is he embezzles money from them, but it's implied he did it to keep the family business afloat, and if he had asked them to make that sacrifice, they all would have. The movie really tries to undercut the fact that all these guys wanted to be in that ring. They never try to do anything else. Even when Mike asks for permission to go play a gig with his band, it's the boy's mother who says no, not Dad. When Kevin calls his dad and tells him to look out for Carrie, Fritz essentially tells him he doesn't want to touch any icky, gross feelings, but he never actually has the opportunity to act or not act. He's out of the house when Carrie comes by in the morning unannounced. Durkin positions Mama Von Erich as oppressed under Fritz's reign and roof, but she's way colder to the boys than even Fritz, totally unwilling to answer the boys' cries for help throughout the entire film. When the film gives her a denouement throwing off the shackles of the patriarchy by not cooking and painting defiantly, it's like, what shackles? Who told you not to paint? Her oppression isn't in the film. Pam is clearly supposed to be the voice of reason and eyes of clarity through the fog of testosterone, progressive on all fronts, a career woman, asks the guy out on a date, sexually liberated, etc., etc. But she too is terrible. She doubles down on her aforementioned manipulation of Kevin, again finding him at his lowest at another of his brother's funerals and threatening him with divorce if he doesn't grieve with her desired methods at her desired pace. The dude is cracking up. He thinks his proximity to one of his kids might cause them to freaking die because it's happened 4 times already and he's unequipped to deal with his emotions. This is making him borderline mentally ill, and Pam thinks at the funeral is the best time to threaten divorce. On their first date, Pam informs Kevin she wants to be a vet. She wants to own her own practice and he needs to be okay with that. And he is. We see that with him picking up the kids from school and making the family dinner when she gets home from work. But Kevin's career is always treated like a problem, even though he clearly loves it. We never see Mama Von Erich or Pam in the stands. Pam doesn't support Kevin the way Kevin supports Pam. Ultimately, I just don't think that Durkin's scenes add up to his desired takeaway, that Fritz's and professional wrestling's toxic masculinity culture of repressing your feelings and chasing status symbols was indoctrinated into the Von Erich boys and directly led to their respective deaths. After throwing the kitchen sink at you to get the waterworks going, the film ends on an "it's okay to cry" message. Look, cry if you want, but how about we also do some stuff to get people the help they need? How about we talk about CTE, depression, drug abuse, steroid abuse, and not just feature it on the edges of the frame, leaving top billing for the boogeyman of toxic masculinity? You can be in touch with your feelings and still succumb to drug addiction. You can bawl your eyes out and still walk away from one of the very many tragedies the Von Erichs experienced. Freak accidents, not caused by toxic masculinity, damaged, forever changed. Crying just doesn't feel like enough of an action to end on for me, and the insinuation, even in the heavily doctored movie version of events, that if Fritz had been more emotionally expressive with his sons, they might not have faced emotional challenges after Jack Jr. drowned, or David wouldn't still have died of an inflammation of the intestine, or Mike wouldn't have suffered brain damage resulting from toxic shock syndrome, or Carrie wouldn't have taken his own life after living through all of this, plus a lifetime of career disappointments, relationship disappointment, substance abuse, and physical disability. Fritz is a character in this story too, or should be, though he's totally depersoned in Durkin's retelling. He's reduced to a cartoon, not dissimilar from his heel persona in The Ring. The real-life Kevin Von Erich, who disagreed with his father's depiction in the film, says in the behind-the-scenes doc on the Blu-ray, "I hope this film has a message like, life is worth it, fight for it." Durkin's movie is pointing fingers in the dark. Cry if you want, but sometimes it's nobody's fault. The role of Jenny Penn was never going to be a smash hit. The eye-catching physiques and dazzling stunt work from the Iron Claw are replaced by old-timers quoting Hemingway and nodding off. Marketing for the film tried its best to squeeze it into the mold of a return-reliable small-budget horror movie, leading a lot of people to assume there'd be a supernatural or pseudo-supernatural angle with the puppet, and a lot of people left the theater disappointed. It's horrific, just not in the ways you might expect if you're expecting a Late Night with the Devil or Blumhouse-style horror movie. Allow me to adjust expectations. The Rule of Jenny Penn is a prison movie. Not so mild-mannered judge Stephen Mortensen is doing his huge, handing out life sentences to pedophiles when the old noodle gets a little too spaghetti. And Morty starts handing out judgments, BOGO 2-for-1, telling the mom of the child victim she's guilty too. That in the absence of lions, a way better title, hyenas rule. Then he uses his noggin as a gavel, and presto changeo, court's adjourned and hell's in session. Imprisoned in his body by the stroke and imprisoned in a cheapo retirement community by bad investments, Stephen realizes he might be staring down his own life sentence of sing-along song time and 52 pickup on legendary difficulty. Things can always get worse though. Royal Pine's very own local psycho Dave Creeley sets his baby blues and babies too on Morty, sneaking into his room at night to inflict increasingly sinister debasements. Creeley's knowledge of the retirement home system and Stephen's bunkmate ex-rugby pro Tony Gunnar Garfield's man code culture of silence, along with Stephen's own misanthropy, isolates Stephen, and his fight to resist subjugation and maintain his own dignity grows increasingly hopeless. You can view the movie through many lenses. James Ashcroft says the film is about tyranny. It's not hard to connect those dots. Abuses of power within ineffective systems, with a representative of law and order becoming too weak to enforce it, Lithgow's Creeley committing all manners of indecent acts under the figurehead of Jenny Penn, who just as easily could be a caricature of any despot. There are allusions to New Zealand's political landscape. Many of the care staff, along with Hanare's Gunner, are Maori. Creeley's casual racism with his Maori on the moon joke evoking themes of colonization and indigenous suppression. The film has a lot to say about aging, the loss of agency, and social status that can occur late in life, so the masculinity angle might not be the take that jumps out at you, but hear me out. While Iron Claw is focused on the symbols of masculinity, the characters in The Rule of Jenny Penn are focused on what those symbols actually represent. Old age has stripped them of not just their professions, but their physical abilities and lifestyles. They aren't as sharp as they used to be mentally. Their ability to affect change in the world in an immediate and everyday sense is rapidly diminishing. This is where both men derive their notions of self-worth from. I have a function and I perform it well. I'm a judge and I dispense justice. I'm a left tackle and I tackle. Sorry, I don't know anything about rugby. Along with these functions are the more stereotypical base functions a society expects of any man, the most foundational being independence, to be able to take care of yourself. Both of our main characters live in an assisted living facility. It's logical to say, hey, these guys are old, everybody gets old, and now their ability to be independent is beyond their control. Absolutely. They paid into the system their whole lives, and now it's the system's turn to take care of them. But this is where toxic masculinity, of a much more sympathetic persuasion than the Iron Claws, rears its ugly head. John Lithgow's Dave Creeley is a fellow resident who's convinced the care facility is harmless, when in actuality, he's of able body and sound though sadistic mind. Dave likes to sneak into other residents' rooms at night and abuse the more feeble than he. This includes Stephen Mortensen's roommate Tony Gunnar Garfield. Gunnar, a former rugby pro, suffers from chronic injuries from his playing days. He's unable to fight Creeley off and unwilling to report Creeley to the staff or ask his family for help. When Stephen asks him why he suffers like this, he explains, "My son's youngest, Thea. She has this way of looking at me. I don't want that look to change. I don't want her to see me as something to pity." He prefaces the admission with the story of Dudley Palmer, national weatherman and nation's fun uncle. People loved him, depended on him, says Gunnar. But when his body was found with the incriminating evidence of his last visit to a dominatrix still lodged in his rear end, an event just happening to coincide with him shuffling off this mortal coil, all anybody remembered of him was that giant pink dildo. He's afraid to ask for help he knows he'd receive. He's afraid to let others know he needs it. He'd rather suffer in silence than risk being remembered as anything other than the man's man he was 40 years ago. Partially out of pride, but too, partially out of fear of a society that relishes in tearing others down, of appeasing their own insecurities with the debasement of others. A society that reduces people to their worst moment, that doesn't forgive and doesn't forget. When Creeley begins to target Stephen, he has no compunctions about his inability to physically resist, but is nonetheless unable to turn the system, in this case the administration of the facility, in his direction to stop the abuse. His misanthropic tendencies and Creeley's skullduggery have turned the staff against him. Psychologically, Morty's integrity seems unshakable. He takes blow after blow without capitulating, even provoking Creeley to the simultaneous repudiation and admiration of Gunnar. But Morty was never alone like Gunnar was. Gunnar says as much, and much like the mother at the trial at the beginning of the film, Steven admonishes Gunnar, judging him harshly as a coward without empathizing with his situation. Morty always had other people to enforce his judgments, a system that would listen to him. The fallacy of Morty's self-sufficiency is exposed with the staff's neglect. It's the man who shot Liberty Valance. You need John Wayne and his gun behind Jimmy Stewart and his books to bring law to the West. To really give the comparison its due, we gotta wade into heavy spoiler territory. If you haven't seen the film and this has piqued your interest, stop the video, like and subscribe, and come back to it after you watched it. The nature of Creeley's torments are very specifically chosen. They hide Creeley's abuse from the care staff, but also thematically tie Creeley to the emasculation of aging. Creeley's puppet is the likeness of a baby girl. The doll mocks our protagonist's old age woes with its contrasting image of youth. It's the ultimate cover of innocence for Creeley, and conversely, when used to crawl over his victim's chest, the ultimate reduction in stature. Ashcroft uses Jenny Penn to visually represent what the characters are without, youth, having domain over the characters. We see Jenny Penn seated in Mortensen's high judge chair, towering over him, scowling at him. Creeley's attacks all concern aspects of aging. He dumps urine over Mortensen as though he has lost control of his bladder. He squeezes at Gunnar's old rugby injuries, where surgeries did their best to replace the parts of his body that have failed. He kicks Mortensen's good leg, on the side that he says isn't dead yet, telling him it just as easily could have been caused by him mispiloting his chair into a coffee table. More direct still, he yanks on Gunnar's catheter, literally attached to his manhood. But there's an assault in particular that drives home the emasculation in the face of aging angle. Creeley considers his domination complete when he crawls his puppet up the chest of his victim and makes them lick her arsehole. If we're equating this to a prison film, and we are, this is the equivalent of an Andy Dufresne in the laundry room type scene. Mortensen resisting the act becomes the stakes of the film. Going further, his background in criminal justice makes him acutely aware Creeley is only just getting started. His evil is likely to evolve. Creeley starts killing residents. In a callback to the first sequence, we again hear Steven's admonition of the mother in court, in the absence of lions, hyenas rule. It's now directed at himself. He knows Creeley will kill again. Mortensen decides, even in his diminished state, he's got to stop Creeley. What follows is what Red in The Shawshank Redemption would call the good fight. Lengthened over days, with Creeley escalating in depravity and Steven somehow rising to the occasion to stop him. Steven tricks Creeley into triggering an asthma attack after he's already depleted his inhaler. Creeley survives and attempts to rape a female resident in front of Steven. Steven rises from his chair, the last time he will ever do so, and strikes Creeley with his cane, fending him off. But Creeley comes back again and again. Mortensen grows weaker, and after a medical emergency causes Steven to be isolated from Gunnar, locked in his body, his mental state deteriorating, alone, Mortensen surrenders to him. The next day at breakfast, Gunnar hobbles over to his friend, his idol. He wants to hear Mortensen resisted, wants to pretend even, if Mortensen would let him. But he can tell from the look on his face. He knows. What happens next is the most emotionally shocked I've been in a theater in a long time. With a tear-filled, sob-induced delivery of the Maori kamate, Gunnar declares war on Creeley. Likely to Creeley's ignorance, he's announced he's going to fight him to the death. This whole sequence soared for me the first time I saw the film. What makes the film special is how bleak it is, while being completely grounded. Every one of us is going to get old, and it's a fight every one of us is going to lose. Yet the decision to act, to keep fighting in the face of overwhelming odds, to suffer defeats and get back up and fight again with whatever strength we have left, that's the real aim of masculine virtue. To act, even at your own detriment, to benefit others around you. Sometimes that action is a punch, but sometimes that action is asking for help. Sometimes we lose, and that's okay. Sometimes we fall from grace, and that doesn't have to define us. Gunnar acts to save Steven, but also to stop the shadow of Jenny Penn from covering everything, from being complete. They pick a battle they think they can win, maybe. In true prison movie fashion, the final showdown happens in the laundry room. For the first time in the movie, they fight with a friend by their side. So yeah, lesson learned from both flicks, no man's an island. It's good to have brothers, by birth or otherwise, but Ironclaw's thinking is a little too buzzword, a little too paint by numbers, where, for me, Jenny Penn feels humanized and nuanced. There's so much more I could say about Jenny Penn. I think Ashcroft misses a turn of the screw, so to speak, with his avoidance of addressing class issues, especially from Creeley's perspective, and the difference in culture between the three men, how it's expressed by their recitations in their respective art forms, Mortensen's literary quoting, Gunnar's kamate, and Creeley's knees up Mother Brown, but this video's long enough. I can see both films continuing to have an audience in years to come, hopefully with Jenny Penn becoming a cult film. Nobody I've spoken with has liked The Rule of Jenny Penn, certainly not to the extent that I do. The crowd I saw it with was pretty cold towards it, so if you've seen it, I'd love to hear your takes in the comments. I wouldn't say Iron Claw is a bad flick, just misguided. And one more thing. If you want to get in your feelings when the lights go down in the theater, let out a little boo-hoo, do it quietly, okay? The Iron Claw showing I went to, primetime Saturday night, Zac Efron gave these dudes the green light and they went pedal to the metal in the wambulance. Come on, fellas, have some class. I don't want to be the bad guy, but if I shush you because you're full-on ugly crying like you dropped the game-winning pop-up in the Little League World Series, we're both going to be embarrassed. Subscribe.